Hi all, welcome back. I am Vishwanath. In previous video, we have developed Spring Boot Rest API from scratch using Java 17, Maven, and integrated with Lombok, HATEOAS, HES2, JPA, Swagger, Actuator, implemented validations, handled exceptions, secured the endpoints via RBAC. Also, we have created Docker image and we have hosted that on Azure GIT for CI. Later, we have worked on API filtering, filter by value, sorting, paginations, versioning, and also learnt about the types of versioning and its purpose. Later, we discussed on various types of mapping like one to one, one to many to one, and many to many as well, and also looked into the database concepts. Later, we unit tested all our changes using the REST templates and also bridged the gap in the coverages and uplifted the quality to certain degree. Later, the code was repointed to Git instead of Azure. Let's see how database changes has evolved. So initially, we have created a user table with the mentioned fields as an ID as an integer, name as a string, birth date as local date, email as a string, and address as well as a string. And we have discussed on embeddable tables and embedded tables, and hence we have converted name from string to name, which will hold two attributes as a first name and a second name. Yet there is no entry on the database as a separate table. Later, we have also studied on foreign keys, and we have also converted our address table from string to address as a class, which holds the following properties like primary key, uh, line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4 postcode, etc. And we have seen how these two tables are now communicating with various kinds of mapping that we discussed. We have also seen that all our code changes are working as desired. Today, let's see how we can segregate address from user service and create that as a separate service altogether called as an address service, which will hold in order to communicate. It will have the primary key of this table in address as address, so that this becomes as a user service, or you can call as a microservice, and this as another microservice. Before we start, in order to do changes, we need to know few principles and patterns and a procedure in which we can do or amend the code changes in a particular order. For any software, the primary agenda would be to make the code work. This will be the most important principle in anyone's job. This may be obvious, but it is good to remember that it follows the principles, work that best on the code that serves our job. The next principle would be YAGNI, which we say like yet you are not gonna need it. That means remove all unnecessary code, because initially we have made it to work and we know like what are the components that doesn't work, so we just remove them. The next principle that I want to discuss is on KISS, which says that keep it simple, stupid. Only after that, it's a time to keep things very simple, which I believe it is very important than being not surprisingly. I would rather work with a complex but not surprising code rather than other way around. It is easier to simplify code if we can get an idea behind it, and later it will be greatly easier if the code is not surprising. And next thing after that would be uh, being consistent with an application standards. Every application has its own standards. In one of the applications that I have worked, where the classes used to have all the attributes as a public, surprisingly, which deviates from the standard coding practices. When a new developer kicks into the team and when they try to implement the Java coding standards, because the application requires attributes to be a public, which uses the reflection mechanism, and the code used to break, and hence it is very important to ensure the changes that we are doing are consistent with the existing application. With that, the next one in the list is dry, which says that do not repeat yourself. So basically what it conveys is if the lines of code or the data which you see is common, probably what you can do is you can either uh, refactor it in such a way that those common lines will be taken as a method and you can call it in the respective places. And next one in the list will be the clean code. Using RAD, we will be able to maintain this clean code. So if you look into the RAD or Eclipse or IntelliJ, we always have a coding style where we have something called as a cleanup. And these actions can be acted whenever you want to save. Like these are also helpful in maintaining the code to be a cleaner. Next one are the design principles like solid, which stands for SRP. S stands for SRP, single responsibility principle. O stands for open close, L a list of substitution principle, I for interface segregation principle, and D for dependency injection, which we will be seeing or implementing that in while we do our code uh, review and as well as refactoring in couple of minutes. Uh, we have already discussed and implemented one of the design patterns called builder pattern, where we have seen how quickly we can create the objects and we can set the properties to those objects. And based on the time, we will also cover all the creational design patterns. So if we look into the code, what applying those design principles, uh, how we can see where we can apply it or where we cannot apply it is by going through the code. If we see this method or this one in the list, where you are saying you are trying to find the member, and when the member is not there, you are throwing an exception. And if you see it, the same number of things you can see it is been repeated even in retrieving by ID and as well as in updating the user. So what we can potentially do is we can move this thing to a separate method and we can invoke that method every time. So in that way, testing that piece of code uh, will also ensure that the other components are working. And another principles that we have seen is for example, Yagni, this kind of a post construct is only required for injecting the data. It is not required in the production case scenarios. So uh, ideally, this component should not be existing when we migrate the changes to the production. And that type of principle that we have discussed are on solid principle, and the first in solid stands for SRP, which says that single responsibility principle. If we take this particular controller, this controller is basically responsible for providing an endpoints, whereas this particular method has no endpoints. So this method should not be present ideally inside this class. Instead, it should be moved to a another class where we can do an annotation as a configuration. So in that way, we can refactor the code. Today, what we will be interested is we will be creating another Spring Boot application where we are trying to migrate all the address changes to there, or we can name that application as an address app. Like how we have user app, we will have another Spring Boot app called as an address app, and we will see how those two applications can run simultaneously and communicate to each other. So let's get started. So Spring Boot starter project where we can say that it is going to take all this changes, and I'm going to click as a finish. So the app is ready and it has populated all the dependencies that we have selected. And now what I am interested is I am interested in moving this entity from user app to address app. So let me open user app because I'm moving it. I'm just removing the mapping so that this has no relationship with address. Uh, Likewise, I will just remove this mapping as well, and this detail so that my even my address has my address entity has no longer referring to a user entity. So now what I will do is I'll just copy that entity over here, and I go to this package and I say like this as an because we have mentioned earlier as a model. I'll just say as a model, move it to the model, and because it requires a key in order to communicate with the user. What I will be saying as this is going to refer as my like key for a foreign key in such a way that this app will be able to communicate with my address app. So let's create a repository for my address app as well. Uh, Address repo where it would be using JPA repo, and because I have created a new one, I'll just say this is going to be an address. Uh, Better I can type it. Yeah, address from model, uh, and it is going to take as an integer. And over here, I'm also interested in creating a method with an find by, because I have created the user ID. I am looking for that method find by uh, user ID. Uh, that's a field which I have mentioned where it is going to take as an integer as a parameter and it takes as a user ID, and rest of the methods are auto populated or implemented by JPA template. So this is going to be my address type. I'm going to import the Java utils. So and also I'm renaming my package from model to repo. So for handling the exceptions, I'll also copy my um, exceptions details over here, where I'll just say this as dot exceptions as a package. So let me rename or move. So uh, if you see it, yeah. So if you see it, I am also interested in making this as a generic or probably I can just leave it as change that as an address instead of saying renaming there. I want to show that if you renaming it using this one, which probably you might be aware of, that will also change all the class name, all the references as well. So you can check the changes and accept. Now let's create an address controller. So instead of creating an address controller, what I'll be doing is uh, I'll just say as a new class address controller control controller, and I will also be copy pasting all these details from user controller, and I will also be changing my references from address to user. I'll just say like move to this package, That's right. So instead of user, what I'm interested is where we have like control F. I'm trying to show you how we can use RAD and how we can speed the work. So I'll just say like replace all, and wherever I have like a user, I just want to say as address, and I'll say as a replace all. So so we will not be requiring address. So I have just truncated. We have an repo, and I'm just trying to go through the code to see like everything is what we need it. And when it is trying to like create it, it takes a body and saves it. Finally, it builds this. So that's a method. And in terms of a delete, when you pass a detail, it is trying to find it. If it is not there, it is going to throw an exception, and then eventually it deletes it. As I said, like we don't want any like logic in a controller which has nothing part of a controller, or nothing part as a REST controller or a REST APIs. So I have just purged that one. And so let us also create this method in address repo, where the method that it has to be created. If I go back to my address controller, the method that we are interested is to create like find by key, which is very similar as like user repo one. So all I'm going to copy paste this query, and also inside this query we have to ensure that there is no reference to address. If there is any reference, probably because now we are migrating, we can just take that off. So now I'll be going to the repo of address, and I'll also be writing this query. Instead of user table, it is now going to be an address table, and instead of, yeah, ID remains the same, and instead of name, it is going to be line 1. uh, and probably I can copy this set. So and it is going to be a line 2, line 2, line 1, line 2. So let me enter it. So, or line 1, line 2, and line 3, line 4, and as well as a post code, right? Like line 3, line 4, or post code. So you can see all the keyboard shortcuts which I have activated, so that it would be easy for you to see, like if I'm using a keyboard, what are the details that one can see as. And we are not referring to user any longer. It is going to be address. So this is for address. So let me save it. Uh, so the repo changes are complete, and I'm going back to my address change, and let me say OK. So so you can see that even this version of get mapping is also working fine. And for the put mapping, I think these are the required changes, because we have one more details as a key that we have to incorporate, where we have to create one more method, and we can incorporate that change. Potentially it is going to be something as get version, because we want to, when user ID is being passed, we have to retrieve all the users, and that was the reason we have created that particular method on the repo as well. So I'm just copy pasting the existing method, and I'm trying to say, like just to differentiate, like whether it is an address ID or user ID. I'm just trying to say as like URI path, I'm going to change it, which probably you can also say like versioning. uh, so what I'll be saying is I over here now I want to retrieve all the addresses. It is going to be based on my user by user, sorry, by user ID, not by user ID, and it still takes the path. Over here, I am not going to display this to the user, so I'm not going to build a link. Instead, what I'll be saying is uh, from the address repo, you just give me those details. So it is going to be very simple one. So from the address repo, because I'm always expecting that there is going to be a record, and I'm just trying to copy paste that. And the reason is this is going to be my list of addresses. And the method that obviously it will not throw any issue. Instead of this, what I'm trying to say is uh, from the service, it is going to be finding by user ID, which we have created it. And obviously, I'm going to, return that type over here. So this is the simplest method that new method that is required, because it is going to be a separate one. All I want to say, like, let this run on a different port, where I'll just mention like server dot port to be 1990. Uh, Also, I'll copy the other application dot properties that we have, like database, show SQLs, etc. on to this application property as well. Uh, and like so, I'll just start this application. So in the meantime, what I will be interested is I'll be interested in making the existing user app to be running, but still be independent of my address changes. So what I will be doing is, in order to do that, I'll create a class called as an address model that will not have any database fields onto it. In order to do that, I can take an existing class, and I can just remove these two annotations, and also the this particular annotation which says that my class is now no longer referring to like database side of it. And I'll also have a property called as a user ID, we as a model. So instead of entity, now it is a DTO. Probably I'll change the package to DTO. DTO, move to DTO. And what I will also be interested is to create a response object, and request object. Probably I can just say as a wrapper class, user address wrapper, because in order to support the previous functionality. So let me uh, copy paste it, so I can say this as uh, user address and wrapper. So as soon as I paste it, you can see like this annotations has come, and the name of the class also has appeared. And I'm just interested in two properties. One is the because I'm going to return a list of addresses instead of a single address. A person, the scenario that I'm trying to implement is a person having multiple addresses, and how that can be still achieved by making two different calls to another microservice. So, and let me import this as a Java util. And also, as I said, like we are not creating any DTO for user, because we are in the same class. So I'm just trying to reuse it. But just for like handling the validations, I can have this logic on this class as valid. So import this Java validation, import rest of the things, and import this user from my model. So, as we are discussing on the communication, how those two microservices interact, it's basically they interact using the REST templates. Here in this example, I'm trying to demonstrate how they can interact because we have already covered it on test REST templates for our testing. I thought it is a good idea to use the REST templates as well inside the application and see how to see, how it is also communicating onto a different port. Now we'll go to the application, and because as I said, like we are going to create required a bean of uh, REST template. Uh, I'm going to create it over here rather than controller. I ideally because we can create that as a configuration because Spring Boot already have that annotation as a configuration. So I'm trying to reuse that. So if you look into this enable auto configuration, this is what I'm trying to refer as. Sorry, I'm actually trying to refer as Spring Boot configuration. If you go inside the Spring Boot configuration, you have an annotation as a configuration. So because we have this annotation, when we mention as a bean, Spring will create a bean and maintain the life cycle. So all the beans by default, the Spring uses the. We can also discuss on the design patterns, which is a creational design pattern, and by default, all the beans that are created by Spring uses the singleton object. That is because to save the memory. Only one instance of an object is created and it is being reused. If we want to, migrate from singleton, then we have to give another annotation called as a scope where we would be typically mentioning what is a scope of this bean to be. Inside the scope, we can mention as a prototype, which means we just want another bean to be created. So in that way, we have covered two more design patterns like a prototype and singleton. Let me finish this code of writing this bean where we are interested in letting as REST template, and it is going to return new instance of REST template. And let me import this particular class. Yeah, so we have made all the necessary infrastructure changes that are required, and let's make the core changes inside our controller, and so that application will not be breaking. Mm, as I say, post construct should not be a part of this mechanism. This is not required. So I just delete that post construct method. It is only required to populate the data initially, where you can use like scripts as well to populate it. So as we have replaced user with a class called user address wrapper, that is what where we are going to use it, and wherever we have a user, we will change this to be user address or anything. Probably it is better we change that as a user address. Uh, Wrapper or entity or transaction, whichever class you call it as. And because it user class is there, I'm just trying to say like get the details of it, which will eventually get it. And instead of saying as a user ID, I'll go to class and I'll say like a refract. This exercise is pretty much to do how code refactoring uh, to be as well. So I'm going to extract a local variable and I call that as a user ID. So this has refracted and it has created. And if you think like it is not required, you can just say like inline. So yeah, the changes are just inlined. So that's how you can use the RAD shortcuts as well to increase your productivity instead of typing all the changes. Now what we would be interested is the second attribute, which is address, which comes from this class where I say as get address. In console, the typical scenario is user has created this details, and from this details, what we are trying to take is we are converting this to stream, and we are interested in uh, uh, each value of it because it is as I mentioned, like one person is having multiple addresses. So for each person, for each address, we have to set the foreign key first to it, so that we would be interested in doing the transaction. So I'll say like this is my address. I'm going to use lambda expressions where for each address I'm going to like set my user ID, where I'm going to get this from user ID. So instead of saying like user ID, because we have already created a variable, so in that way it has reused it. So let's go back to our testing class where we have seen how to call a like uh, class. So the four we required the four parameters. One is the like URI, and another is a type of a method, and third parameter is the HTTP header, and fourth one is an object. And inside the HTTP headers, we have to say like what is a media type, where we have mentioned the media type to be a JSON. I'm trying to copy these values from there to here. So all so that I think it saves some time. So header, copy paste. I have created the header as a JSON object, and inside over here, if you have seen it in one of the test case where we have created a valid user creation, because I'm going to still do the same one. I'm trying to copy this method. The only difference is it was for that one was done for creating a new user along with the address, and this is going to be used for creating a address class alone. So that is the reason I'm going to mention that this is going to be my address class alone, and this object is going to be my value of my address, and which I'm going to take it from my stream, because I think I have used this user address to stream, and for each, so and for each of address. So I'll just say that uh, in a stream for each of address, and this is going to be my uh, template. So the object of the template which I have created, now I'll be auto wiring that, and I would be saying auto wide. And if you go back to our controller, what we have used is this. So I'm just copy pasting it from there to controller, and I'm going to say as a template, uh, template. So import rest template, copy it, and for each, so I'm iterating all my addresses, and for each address I'm going to call my rest template with this parameter. and it is not a user any longer. It is going to be an address. So I'm going to change this value. And over here, there we have created a method, separate method. For time being, I'm going to hard code that. And if you remember, we have added a port. Uh, Localhost, and later we use the discovery servers to graduate from this one instead of hard coding it. And if we go back to our port, it is 1990. So if you click on this star, that will take you back to the place where you are trying to modify the change. That is another keyboard shortcut that is quite useful. And if we go back to our address controller, user address controller, where you can see as an address controller, and you can see it is all referring as an address as. So what I will be doing is I'll just say as replace all as addresses, sorry, addresses. To be exact, I just want to only replace this values. So I'll just say like replace all. So yeah, I think all the details are being replaced. And uh, I'll go back over here because I'm trying to give this. Uh, I thought like it is a good idea to make as an plural so that it follows the HTTP Richardson model like was part one. So let's save this. So it's saved, and let's go to the next method. The next method over here is a delete method, and inside the delete method again the pieces, if you can see it like the doing the header, these two are going to be the same. And so I'll just copy these three things, and what I'll just say is, instead of getting over there, I'll just say like you get the header. And now, so the concept of delete is when we have delete as a cascade. What we did was earlier was when we have deleted the parent object, we have due to that cascade operation, it has also deleted the child elements. The same concept we are trying to implement over here. So we are trying to see like what is the associate um child records for this user ID in address table. And once we get the list of all the addresses, we will be eventually performing one more operation to delete it. So as I said, like over here, we are trying to use this user or users. What is that we have mentioned in address controller? Address controller. I think this is the method for a given user. So ideally it should be users. So I have just saved it. So I'm going back to my controller users dot and the value that we are interested is for this value. Uh, so I'm just going to append it dot get get ID. Yeah, as we are not passing any value for delete, this is going to be a null, and the return type is this is a little tricky because over here we are expecting it to be a response entity which is going to hold a list of addresses. Whenever we are trying to work with the parameterized references, we need to call the parameterized class where we can say PTP, uh, sorry, where we can say as a PTR, parameterized reference class. So I see why it is not working. So I'll just type is shift control or parameterized reference at one. This is the one that I'm interested at. So I'll just go over there and I'll copy that, and because I know this is if we go back to this address controller, we can see that it is going to be a list of addresses. So that's the return type, and hence over here in the generics, I'm going to mention that it is going to be my list of return type, because it is a new instance of it. All I'm going to say is it is a new instance of this, and I'll call this as I'll call this as my addresses. So because it is going to have a lot of address us, so I'm just calling that as a addresses. And now what I will be doing is for this particular one. Uh, typically it is directly we have just called it from template directly, template dot exchange method, where we are trying to call this one with a get method and trying to get this details. So once we have this details, all I need to import this class, import this class. So once I have this one, what I want to say is my response entity dot get body will have my addresses, and for each address, what I'm going to do is I'm going to call a delete method again, which means that typically I'm going to copy this method, and I'm going to say that for each details. I'm going to copy paste this so that it is going to call, and this time when it is going to delete it, it doesn't require any user ID, where it is going to delete it based on the uh, address ID. So based on the address ID, it is going to perform an operation called delete. And because it is a delete, we are not expecting any method to be passed, and the return type of this uh, for a delete operation, if you have seen earlier, uh, we will not pass anything. We will just say as a response entity dot no content. So you can typically say like you can leave that to be object dot class, because ideally you'll not get any response. So if I leave it over there, this method will have this details. So let's see so far if our changes are working or breaking any code. Let's run this application. And when I say run, the default port for this application is 8080. So our user application will be running on 8080, and our address application will be running on 9090. If you see it, our application for address was already running, and now the changes uh, of user app are up. Now let's check it from console. What are the tables that it has populated for user, close, run. So it was not having any details. In the same way, if I copy paste this and I have to change the port to 9090, h2 console. mm, 1990. So if I run it, because I have copy pasted that credentials, this is now only having an address table. And on Swagger, if we go to Swagger, uh, And the method that we are interested is to post the data first so that we can perform the delete action. We can say as a try it out. Over here, you can say like we generally don't pass IDs, so I'm just removing those IDs even for user. So we have some data set, and let me try. So over here you can see like the JSON error has come because of the conversion. Yeah, that is because we have deleted the user ID, but we have not deleted the comma, and that was the error. Let's retry it, and now it says like yeah, application is working and validation has kicked in. It says now that um, email should be mentioned in a proper format. That is one of the validations for that. And also let's create multiple addresses. We will say this as 1 1 1 1 and 1, and likewise we copy this JSON object, and we say we are going to have another JSON object. So where I have pasted it, where I'm going to say like this is going to be 2 2 2 and 2 and 2, and now I'm going to execute it. So you can see the response. It is successful. Let's go to the database and see if it has really created the data. And in user, it is a one record that should create two records in address. So let's see if that's the case. Sorry, I need to select the query. Yeah, now you can see like it has created two records. Let's now test the delete functionality as well, because we have written the code. Let's delete the uh, record one. Before that, we'll again create one more execute two twice. Thrice I have created. If I run the query, three records are present. Over here, I should get six records, which is right. And if I'm going back over here, and because I'm going to delete it, I'm going to say as delete my second record. Uh, if I say as delete, by the looks of it, this delete is in red. I was thinking like something is not working as required. Over here, it just says that So let's go to the console and verify it, what it is going. So let's run the query. So the expectation is, yeah, the second record is deleted. Likewise, out of six records, this records, because the user ID contains like the record ID with 3 and 4 should be deleted. Run. So again, let us again try with 3, record 3. When we pass record 3, execute, and then when we say as a run, it has only one record. When we say it, and also now let's delete the first record as well, so that there is no record in the table. Yeah, the delete functionality is also working fine. Now let's move on to the other functionalities. So far, we have implemented for post mapping, and we have also implemented for delete, because we are for delete we have implicitly read the data where we are trying to get these details. So all I'm going to copy paste these details. Uh, and I'm going to my get user for ID, where it is trying to initially get the user, and before it is performing the new link, I'm going to paste my code where I'm trying to say like for this JSON type, it has to uh, again get the details. How it is going to get the details now is it is again going to be a get method. So it is a get method, and it is going to have a parameter as well. So there is no changes. So potentially this piece of code can be made as a method. And the other thing that I wanted to mention is Now because it is trying to get the object, we have to use our wrapper class, which is user address wrapper. Uh, Generally, these are the keyboard shortcuts. Instead of typing everything, you can always give the capital letters, so that you'll get the required classes. And what we are trying to say is we are going to get this responses which is going to be contain a list, and because it is a response from there, we are saying like a get body, like how we have done earlier, and we already have the user object where that is a place where we say as a user DB. Inside the user DB, all I am trying to say is a call as a build method. This will give me an object, and that object I'm going to pass that finally as an my response. I no longer required this method. It is only one method that I required. Instead of user DB, now I need to pass this object of this, where I say as a response or reply, uh, because it's less typing, and I'm going to say as this is going to be big, because my value, obviously I have to change my entity model to my user wrapper instead of user. So let's quickly see if even this test case works or not. Every time when there is a change made, application auto restarts because the DevTools were integrated. And what we will be doing is, again we'll start from scratch, like a post method where we'll create multiple records, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. So, and now because it's a get mapping, get for user, if I say like for the first record, I expect for this record, I expect both my user and as well as an address. So when I have keen one, I have got over here, if you have seen it, now the user ID is one, but the address ID, as there are no changes in the address table, the old records are still persistent, and we are getting this results. Let's clear the address table. Mm, all to clear is delete, or probably we can just do some changes so it gets deleted automatically. So run likewise, delete from delete from user table, run. So it has, now the data is clean. So let's repeat this exercise just to see the details are consistent or not. So I'm going to my post method, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10. So now I'll go to my get method, and I'll say execute. So one is not found. This is because we have deleted it, and the strategy on the like table says like auto, and that was the reason. Instead, what we can do is, from the user app we can make some change, so that because it's an in-memory database, all the data gets auto cleared. So we need not go to the tables and clear it in the way where I did earlier. So connect, refresh, connect. So it has connected. So let's quickly create again the post method. And this is the fourth round of testing. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. Hopefully, finger crossed, everything will be all right this time. So let's go to execute one. Yeah, so one and one. And for the address record two, also it is having one. So on the database, if we see it, run it, you see like this set of records has been shown on the screen. let us say like for that particular one, we have retrieved the records in this pattern, and we have anyway seen the delete functionality. Let me delete it. So if I go to my one has now been deleted. Likewise here, the one record has been deleted. So we have implemented the read functionality, we have implemented the delete functionality, and we have also implemented the create functionality, and updating is very much similar to the create. So for now, because it is almost like a close to an hour, I'm skipping it. However, our code is still breaking, so let's quickly fix those issues from our code. The first line of change, it says like an address class, so we still have an address, so it is an import statement where it is going to be a different. So address is no longer from model, it is from DTO. Likewise, we like user. Now we have created something as a user address class. So user address wrapper. Yeah. So let's use that concept in terms of user address. So what we are going to say is we have that wrapper. So from that wrapper, it is no longer as an user builder. Everything we build the wrapper object, and then we set these values. So what I would be interested is I would be setting my user to set user. Yeah, I have set the user. Likewise, I'll just say like I want to set my address as well. Instead of that, I would be saying in that my address has been set. So let me see like how many compilations issues are there. One more. So it is the same thing. So what I will be doing is I'll just say as a star previous edit location. So this is what my previous edit location is. I'll go to my compilation issues, and then I'll just fix it where it is a list of both the addresses. So now I'll run all my test cases, run as instead of test cases, I can also run this for my coverage, run as coverage as a JUnit test coverage. So let it run. So it has started. Note that we have not implemented the security inside it. Generally, you can implement the security, and probably instead of copy pasting the security thing from here to there, which I can still do it as a placeholder. I think I have left that. Earlier we have discussed about HTTP basic. Now probably we can integrate that with different things, and we'll see how it can work. Currently, now we can see like our JUnit, although there are no compilation issues, the details are going to be given are going to be a different. So if you see the primary reason why it has given these details is earlier we was using a user object. It was no longer as an user. Instead of user, what we have to replace is a user address in all the places. So instead of user dot address 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Maybe what I can do is I'll just quickly take this pattern, Control F, and I say as uh, user address. So replace all. So now let me run all the testing. So once the testings are done, then probably I'll commit the changes. At least we have seen that code is not breaking, um, and hence we can commit the changes once. And also we have now come up with a new microservice altogether, which is an address app, which is where user will be still able to do all the required functionalities for which we have not written any test cases. We can easily write it, but now for uh, on the UI purpose, I can demonstrate because it is running on a different port, 9090. We can go to that port, and we can just say like it is no longer this controller. Uh, it is just an HTML on this port. Swagger. The reason is we have not integrated Swagger in this, and that was the reason. Like, let me quickly integrate that. So let me go to application. Sorry, not application properties. Pom.xml. Let me look for Swagger. Sorry, Open API. Open API. So let me copy paste along with the version and dependencies. So let me go to this application where pom.xml of this application, and let me add the dependencies. Okay, so security. Okay, so now I have added the required changes. Let me go to the browser and quickly say as a refresh. Swagger refresh. Has it started? Address app. Yeah. After a restart, as I mentioned earlier, XML changes, although we have configured DevTools, it will not work. So let's quickly see if these details are working. Let's go to data. We should not give this. So let's try it out. Uh, Ideally, we should not also display it, but for testing purpose, I'm going to execute it. So over here we can see like a 201 is created, um, and let me execute it a couple more times. If I go to get addresses, if I try it out and execute it, I have got the list of addresses along with the user ID. Get method has worked as desired, post method worked as desired, and get version v1. If I try it out, execute it, it has given some details. It has given the details, and I believe the rest of the functionality will also be working. And I quickly go for here, and I just try because of user ID being one. If I key it, I have got all the required list, all the four details that I have created. So even this method is working as desired. And the in method that I'm interested now is in delete functionality. It has also, like deleted, and hence we got 204, which was very much same. And for this method, if for one, all I'm trying to update is this is going to be 1 1 1 and 1, and then say as an execute. And for 3, this is going to be 3 3 3 3 and 3, and then going to execute. And again I go back to my get methods just to see 1 3. Yeah, the values that I have created has working fine because we have not passed the ID has been set as null. Yeah, we will be handling that down the line. Ideally, we should not do this kind of transactions from address screen. So ideally, this method should not be existing. It should only be accessed by via from a person ID, because we have a like dependency on the person table. That's all for today. I know it has taken more than 1 hour. but all the concepts are very important, and this is the foundation for microservices. Currently, just a recap, what we have seen was we have segregated the dependency from user app. Earlier, the user was having a dependency on address, and also not to have a tight coupling, we have loose coupled the changes, and we have created a separate structure and separate database running on a different server instance altogether. And currently, whenever we are trying to read those details or get the details or modify the dependent details, we are using the REST templates inside our controller class, and we are trying to get the required data that we are interested in via REST templates. And currently we are hard coding it, hard coding the port details. But in typically this is not a good practice. We will see how we can evolve from hard coding to use a like discovery servers down the line, or probably in the next video. Thank you all. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.